Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Wonder of Anime. I'm Lisa, and I'm here today to tell you about a new romance series that I have been reading that I think you might enjoy. If you are someone who loves romances featuring adult characters and you want those characters to act more in line with your perception of what adults act, I think this is a great story and I'm so excited to talk about. I've actually had this video like scripted since I read this series back in February, but I've kind of been accidentally neglecting my YouTube channel. So, I am here to tell you today about Takahashi's Bike Shop, and this is a manga series by Arare Matsumushi, and it is published in English by Yen Press. Now, I will tell you how I got introduced to this series, and this is actually from a friend of mine who's also been a guest on my podcast, and that is Lucy, aka Opal Line. She is an artist, and she has kind of been the only person that I've seen online talking about this series. Not saying that there aren't others. There's probably many people talking about this. I hate when people are like, no one's talking about this. And it's like, shut up. The people you follow aren't talking about it, but it doesn't mean no one is talking about it. Which is my case, where Lucy is probably the only person that I follow that has talked about this series. And immediately, like, okay, look at this cover. We have someone that looks kind of like delinquently delinquent-y. By in Japanese standards, and somebody who looks like an office lady. And I was like, great, perfect, I'm sold. And in back in February for my birthday, I got some Barnes and Noble's gift cards, finally saw this in stock and had to grab it. And I want to talk about it because I think it's such a cute series. I think it's also very important. The conversation and what the characters are kind of going through are something that I find that is handled very well in this story. It's very different and it's just good. So we're gonna go ahead and get into it. So this story is about a woman named Tomoko Hano, also known as Panko, and she is an office lady, but she's going through the motions. She's not really expressive in her feelings, and she just goes to work, does what she gotta do. She has a hard time like expressing her feelings. She really doesn't say no to anyone. Her kind of philosophy is like, whatever, I'll just deal with it. She has a best friend at work that she's close to, and that's pretty much it. And she rides her bike to work every day. And then one day she sees this guy who is outside of a bike shop and kind of lets her know, like, girl, there's something going on with your bike. His name is Ryohei Takahashi, and he is a little bit younger than her, still an adult. But they kind of like from there kind of keep meeting, kind of having these connections, and eventually form a friendship. And this friendship is so important to Panko, although she may not initially realize it, because Takahashi is someone that kind of challenges her inner thoughts, her beliefs, and like why she does the things that she does. This story pans multiple volumes. There are definitely more volumes out in Japan versus here. We have 3 volumes available here, and I think the 4th one will be coming out soonish. But in the course of these 3 volumes, we see them kind of go from strangers to friends to then getting into a relationship, which I'm always a fan of when people are getting into relationships early on. And they just have a really cute but interesting dynamic and chemistry. And it is something that we see throughout the chapters really push Panko in different ways. Immediately, what really made me like this series is the character Panko. And something that I feel like may be a misconception about her, or maybe something that people might initially think about her, is that she's very kind of quiet. She doesn't express her feelings, but it doesn't come from a place of fear. Sometimes we have these female main characters who are like shy, they're afraid of saying anything, they don't want to rock the boat, and as a result they kind of let people walk all over them, and you kind of just want to be like, girl, stand up, get some confidence, and do the things. And what we see with Panko is that while she doesn't speak up and defend herself, or, get herself out of certain situations, it's not because she's afraid. And it's not because she like needs to grow a backbone. She kind of has just grown very apathetic to the point where she's like, well, what's the point? Like, what is the point? Like, yes, I could speak out. Yes, I could complain. But what happens after that? Is this even worth it? And that, I think, is something that a lot of people may relate to, or a lot of people have gone through, because what we see with Panko is that this is something that she has developed through things from her childhood, where she has felt that speaking up has either had negative consequences, or didn't make any differences, or nobody cared. So to her point now in adulthood, she's like, whatever, like, I just don't want to spend additional energy on this. And she learns, like, okay, nobody's gonna care. I'm an inconvenience. My needs are an inconvenience, so I'll just hold my tongue, not say anything, and act indifferent. And I think what really struck me about this portrayal of Panko is that there's a lot of people who are apathetic in their own life. There's a lot of people who are in the passenger seat of the cars of their life, and someone else is in the driver's seat, either making decisions, or because the person is not making decisions, they're kind of letting things fall on other people and just going with the motions. And while that is a survival mechanism, that is a protective mechanism, it is something that at a certain point in your life is no longer going to serve you. And that is something that Panko goes through in this story and needs to realize. And that, for me, just seeing that portrayed in these chapters, I was like, wow, I love it here. I love the growth, and I love the perspective that sometimes people just, due to trauma or due to things in their past, they've grown so disenfranchised, like, by themselves. Like, that's the thing with Banco. Like, she's kind of have done this to herself. And what we see with her meeting Takahashi and getting to know him in his friend circle is it kind of motivates her to think differently about herself and her life and what she wants out of everything. The other part of the story that I really appreciate is, of course, Takahashi. Takahashi is rough around the edges. Of course, he kind of has like this delinquent demeanor to him, and he's only like maybe 3 or 6 years younger than Panko. Let me double check. They have a 4-year age gap. And this is something, as you get older, age gaps within reason start mattering less. But it's very interesting because Panko's like 30, so he's 26. And Takahashi is so different that he's very direct. He's very direct, like, hey, let's go on a date. Let's do this. Making initiatives with her. And because Panko is so apathetic, she's kind of at first kind of like, okay, like just kind of going with it and kind of letting him take this lead without even realizing it. And it's something that she then has to examine, like, okay, why am I feeling like, why am I so just okay with him? Like, I'm just like, okay, I guess I'll do this. I'll go on a date. I'll hang out with you and your friends. And that is just something about Takahashi's character where he is taking the lead. And that, I feel like, is so important to the story because it shows that he takes the lead in his own life. He's very direct. He takes initiative to get the things that he wants and makes the moves that he wants to do. And that is something that Panko needs to see, because she needs to see, like, hey, I also am capable of making moves, of making decisions, and taking control of my life. So I think it's such a great force that he has come into her life like this. And something else that I really appreciate about Takahashi's character is that, like I mentioned, he has a robust friend group. He has his friend group from high school, and we see kind of like their backstory and how they became friends. And it's diverse. Someone's married, someone has a child, and someone's like very nerdy, and they all get along, but they all hang out and do things. And I think also with Panko being so apathetic in her life, like, she literally just goes to work and goes home. She doesn't really have hobbies. She's not really doing things. And once she starts hanging out with Takahashi and getting integrated in his friend group and like going to movies and doing things, that's also like, wake it up, girl. Like, I could be doing my own things too. And I just love him as a character, and I love them together in this relationship. As I mentioned, this story, I was drawn to it because it's adults in a relationship, but also with adult relationship stories is that you see these people in their communities and the vast, like, different people that they have in their life. Panko's best friend is her coworker, who is dating like a mangaka, and they've been in a long-term relationship, and then she gets pregnant, and then she's her pregnant best friend slash coworker, and we see Panko being like, girl, when you leave this job, like, I'm gonna have to leave this job, like, I can't be at work here without you. And I think we all have those people at our jobs that it's like, if you quit, I'm quitting, because I can't stand these people here. And I love that. And like I mentioned, Takahashi has a friend group, and then we see the relationship like Panko and her mom, then Takahashi and his father and his grandfather or his uncle. Like, you have these different relationships, and I think sometimes romances can be so insular, and it can be just like couple. And I love stories that branch out and feature other people, because in any relationship, like, you don't live on an island, and your relationship with your friends influence your relationship with your family, and your relationships with your family influence your relationships with friends. And I love seeing that portrayed. Something that I also appreciated when it comes to showing those other relationships is how those other relationships can be strained, can be hurtful, can be a source of trauma or a source of like great pain for these characters. We see this with Panko's mom, where their relationship really isn't the best. And at the end of volume 3, Takahashi's dad, we meet him, and it is a crazy situation that we don't have all the information for yet. So I think showing that and having those type of things, it's things that people go through when they're married, when they're in long-term romantic relationships. Like, sometimes you do got a crazy family member, and as a couple, we got to be like, okay, how are we going to deal with this family member? How are we going to work through this? How are we going to work through what you've gone through with them, and how that's playing a part in your adult life now, or how that's playing a part in how you treat me in our relationship. And it's so refreshing to also get this type of perspective from a romantic story. Overall, there's so much more that I want to say about this series, but I don't want to give spoilers. I think everything that I covered was light enough. There's still big things that I didn't mention, but I really want more people to read this story. I want more people talking about this story, because it's just good. It's a good story. It is very well rounded, and you can tell that the mangaka has put so much thought into the main characters, but also the side characters and the situations and the developments that are going. I am absolutely obsessed with these two. They are so cute. And look, you got the best friend and the other guy in the background. Like, there's so much here. And I love these type of stories as someone who is in their 30s, who's married, who has a very robust and fulfilling life with many friends and family members. I like seeing that represented in manga, and it's just good. It's so good. I need everybody to read it, and then when you read it, go and reread it some more and wait with me for the subsequent volumes. But yeah, I definitely think you should check out Takahashi from the Bike Shop. If you have and you want to talk about it, let's talk about it in the comments, or reach out to me, because I can yap about this story forever. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you on the next one. Peace out.